It's cool in here. No heating. Warmer outside.
Thanks, Fiach. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all again. Really delighted this week that we had three substantial pieces of work that were agreed by Cabinet. Firstly, the Family Court Bill. Secondly, the Family Justice Strategy to go hand in hand with that. And then thirdly, the review of the child maintenance, which Minister Humphreys will discuss in further detail. Maybe just at the outset, I suppose, to paint the picture, when a family breaks down or where there are difficulties in a family, we need to make sure that we have a system, that we have a structure, be it in the courts or outside of it, that it makes it easier for that family, particularly where children are involved, to reach a conclusion and to be able to go their ways in an amicable way. The structure that we have at the moment, I believe, does not support that process. It can often lead to a much more adversarial situation, mainly because it forces people into the courts. I think also in situations where you have abuse within a relationship, it can often lead to further abuse happening within the courts. So it's really important that we have a court system, but in general a family law structure that supports people, that makes it easier, more accessible, that puts the voice and the interests of the child to the very forefront, and that we can support people through what is a really difficult and traumatic time so often in their lives. The intention with the Family Court Bill is firstly that we would establish a family court as divisions within the existing court structures. There will be a family high court, a family circuit court, a family district court, which obviously are dealing with matters that are appropriate within their individual jurisdictions. Judges will be assigned on a full-time basis to the family courts. These will be judges who have training or experience, who are suitable to deal with family law matters, who want to deal with family law matters, and they will be required to undertake ongoing professional development and training throughout their career and throughout their position within the courts. In order to ensure that we have proper management of the courts, there will be a principal judge within each of the sittings. So similar to the president of the various different courts, there will be a principal judge to ensure that cases are managed well and that obviously the courts are operated in the best way possible. We have legislation which will ensure that there's a greater proportion of non-contentious issues dealt with at the district courts. So often at the moment people find themselves in the higher courts. It can be a challenging process but also very expensive for individuals, so we want to take that away from them and obviously reduce the cost as well as making it as non-contentious as possible. The intention is that the family court will sit and hear family matters on different days, in different rooms, potentially in different courts to where other matters are being held, and this is to acknowledge the fact that so often families are sitting in the middle of what might be criminal cases. They're sitting looking next to each other, there's no space, there's no room. It's not an environment that is again conducive to resolving these type of difficult matters. So it's important that we have different spaces, separate spaces, acknowledging the situation that people are in. It will allow for applications to be made for judicial separation, divorce and dissolution of civil partnership through joint applications. So again, to make it as straightforward as possible. We will also have a dedicated Family Rules Committee, and the bill itself will set out a guiding principle to help ensure that the family court system works in the best way possible to put the best interests of the child forefront to everything that they do, and that means listening to the child, taking on board the voice of the child, but also what it is that the child themselves wants. Hand in hand with that then, we have published the Family Justice Strategy. This is a piece of work that has been ongoing in tandem with the development of this bill. We have brought together various different stakeholders from my own department and others, but as well NGOs, legal professions and those who work within this space. There are 9 key goals within that. The first is to support children, so again, first and foremost, the rights and the interests of the child. Ensuring that we have services and supports, so making sure that those who are engaged in the family justice system, they have access to supports irrespective of where they are in the country. Information and awareness. Information is key, making sure that it's easily accessible, available to them, be it online, be it in the services that they're engaged with. That we have a great focus on alternative dispute resolution, again trying to take this out of the courts in as much as possible. That we have people development, so anybody who is involved in the family justice system, that there is training, that there is understanding, that there is continuous professional development. Data and information, so again data is key, making sure that we have better ways to gather data through the court service that can help me and others to develop policy that works for people. Digitalisation is key, and that will just feed into the overall modernisation programme for the court service and making sure that all the systems link up. Facilities, infrastructure and case management, making sure we have the buildings, the infrastructure, the ancillary supports that people need, and then finally legislative reform, if there's further legislation that needs to happen, that's continuously kept under review. So there's a huge amount of work in this, and just to thank and acknowledge, I suppose, all stakeholders, families, individuals who have fed into this process. It's really important that we get this legislation enacted as quickly as possible. It's really important that we put these structures in place because, as I said at the outset, while there's a lot of wonderful people working in the system, I don't think the system we have at the moment supports families to ensure that they can go through what is a really difficult time in the best possible way. Thank you.
Okay, thanks Helen, and good afternoon everyone, and thanks for being here. And I'm very pleased to join Minister McEntee and Minister Brown today as they announce major reforms of the family court system in Ireland. And today we are announcing the publication of the report of the Child Maintenance Review Group. And I'd like to sincerely thank the chairperson, Judge Catherine Murphy, and the other members of their group for their work in relation to this important, challenging and complex matter. On foot of the report, I am pleased to say that the Government has approved a number of major changes in relation to how child maintenance payments are treated within the social welfare system. The two most important changes for lone parents are number one, child maintenance payments will no longer be assessed in the means test for payments from my department. And as far as I'm concerned, child maintenance is about looking after the child, and it shouldn't mean a deduction in a person's one-parent family payment or job seekers payment. So what this change will do is put more money into the pockets of lone parents. The second major change is that I'm removing the requirement that lone parents must have made an effort to seek maintenance before they can qualify for the one-parent family payment or the job seekers transitional payment. Often this involves lone parents having to go to the courts to seek maintenance before they can qualify for a social welfare payment. And this was only adding stress faced by lone parents. And let's be honest, more than often that it is women who are affected, and particularly in cases where relationships had broken down in very difficult circumstances. So removing this requirement will also help to reduce the burden on the court system. And I believe that these recommendations are very progressive and that they will be very beneficial for lone parents. In terms of how child maintenance is handled through the court system, I very much welcome the reforms that Minister McEntee and Brown are bringing forward today, because we need a modern, flexible family justice system, one that enables families to move towards a simpler and a more effective way to resolve their issues. And these reforms are all about making the family court system more efficient, less adversarial and more family friendly, just as Helen has said. And one of the concerns that has been raised with me, and indeed I saw it myself during my days working in the credit union, is that sometimes partners, and once again most of the time it's men, sometimes they were able to get out of the attachment orders for maintenance payments too easily. So for example, if they changed jobs or if they moved on to a social welfare payment, the maintenance payment stopped. And I saw many women coming into me, and it'd be they get a week, they'd miss a few weeks, then they get another week, miss a few more, and they'd end up with the maintenance was in arrears, possibly then having to go back to court to get the whole thing restarted. So that's the sort of thing that we want to try and avoid. We want the maintenance payment to stick. So when somebody receives a maintenance order, they have to pay so much a week, well then they should just get on and pay it. And not have this carry on where they're missing weeks and causing all sorts of stress that's absolutely unnecessary. And that's why I'm pleased, as part of the Family Justice Strategy, which Minister McEntee is publishing today, the Department of Justice will undertake a review of the enforcement of child maintenance orders in the first half of 2023. And as part of that review, the Department will examine if proposals to strengthen attachment orders need to be brought forward, and they will also consider the feasibility of introducing guidelines on child maintenance amounts. Again, the focus of that is about making the system work better for families, and particularly for vulnerable lone parents. So I leave it at that. Thank you, and over to James.
Thanks very much. I'm delighted to join my colleagues here, Minister McEntee and Minister Humphreys, to mark the publication of the first Family Justice Strategy and to mark the government approval for the Family Court Bill. Many families live their lives without the need to recourse for expertise or legal services. For some, life changes can mean they need help from an expert. Going through a breakdown in a relationship can result in many issues that need to be resolved, like living arrangements, financial supports, parenting decisions and custody of children. Some of these issues may require legal advice from a solicitor, a visit to court with a barrister, a decision by a judge, or reaching an agreement through a mediator. There is no doubt that going through the breakdown of a relationship is difficult and stressful. In the worst cases, access to the legal system is critical for people to be able to live their lives safely. And these changes can be upsetting, stressful and sometimes traumatic for all members of a family, and the process of going through that family justice system should not add to that stress. And as someone who practiced as a barrister in family law for about 6 years myself, I certainly seen a lot of those stressful situations. The Family Justice Strategy sets out a vision for a family justice system of the future, a system that will focus on the needs and rights of children, a system that will assist parents in making decisions that affect all of the family, a system that will make it easier for vulnerable parents and families to get the support to make informed decisions, and crucially, a system that is less concerned with winning and losing and more focused on achieving workable solutions for families that they can live with. It will take time to bring about long-lasting reform. It will also take sustained effort from everyone involved in the family justice system, from the judiciary to the court service to the legal professionals and practitioners to government departments, and to all of the organisations that are involved in assisting families to resolve their disputes. This important strategy will run for a period of 3 years, with a 6-month review period at the end. It marks the first step on an important journey of reform, setting the groundwork for a modern, flexible system that will take us closer to a simpler and more effective way for families to resolve their issues. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're open for questions. Paul and then Katie. Minister McEntee, you're on the list of banned representatives from Russia. You'll no longer be welcome in Moscow. I'm very devastated, and get a bit of reaction. And then secondly, for all three ministers, there are ongoing calls now for a commission of investigation or some kind of inquiry into the abuse and the security order. Do you support that? Is it something that you would, in principle, support?
Well, to your first question, I stand behind anything that I've said in relation to Russia, the ongoing barbaric and illegal war that is being waged on Ukraine, and like my colleagues, I stand fully behind the people of Ukraine and whatever comes of that, and decision by the Russian government, that's their decision, but it certainly won't change my view and my position, and the fact that we need to support Ukraine and all of their citizens in any way that we can. In relation to the potential investigation or commission of inquiry, for me what's most important is that we listen to the victims, that we listen to those who have come forward, that there is justice at the end of the day for some of those who have come forward. Justice means the criminal justice system, making sure that those who are responsible are held responsible, irrespective of what age they are or how long ago it happened. For others, there was a different route that they are obviously seeking, so I don't think we should rule anything out at this stage. I know that the Spartans have opened up a direct line for people to be able to engage directly with them, and I know the Gardaí are working on a number for individuals to be able to contact them directly. They have had a number of cases in the past, but obviously given the recent revelations, they feel it's appropriate to have a dedicated line for people to be able to contact them. So I think we need to get a full picture here. We need to know exactly how many or who we're talking about. We need to listen to the voices of those who are speaking to us, and at the end of the day, I mean, these are appalling acts we're talking about, so we need to make sure there is justice, and whatever form that comes in. As I said, we need to listen to those who are asking it.
Yeah, just to follow on what Helen said there, the Taoiseach has said that he will give consideration to a public inquiry, and you know, the one thing about public inquiries, they usually take a lot longer than was initially thought they would take. There's going to be statements in the House next week, and I think you know, the best way forward here, as Helen has said, we need to listen to the people concerned, we need to hear their voices, but I think that we can sit down on a cross-party basis and make a decision on what the best way forward is.
Yeah, just to echo my colleagues' comments, I think whatever the appropriate step that needs to be taken should be taken and will be taken, but I think what we need to do at the moment is just take on board the views and allow the Garda Síochána as well to take the necessary investigations that they're carrying out.
Can I ask, first of all, when is the dedicated family court going to be open? What are you going to do about the lack of regulation of court experts providing Section 47 and Section 32 with no oversight, no right of appeal? Parents can't get hold of them. Very questionable quality of some of the reports that were made about people's lives. And Mr. Humphreys, there's been a lot of calls for making a statutory maintenance agency to take the heavy lifting away from parents that have to come in England. Why is that not introduced? And also, actually, why isn't there a cap passing themselves this year so like they have in England, which would provide huge support to families and trusts and support?
Firstly, in relation to the family court, I've said, I think previously 2026 is the timeline that we're working towards. We have a dedicated project team in place, and obviously we're working through the planning process and the various different stages, and I intend that to be the timeline, and that's what we're working towards. I've been down in Dolphin House. It's not, you know, it serves a purpose, but it's not adequate. It doesn't meet the needs of the families that are using it, and so we want to get into what is a hole in the ground at the moment as quickly as possible and make sure that people can have access to it. In terms of the Section 47s, you're right, there is no clear governance structure, there is no structure in place at all. That needs to change. We've acknowledged that in the domestic violence strategy as well, making sure there's clear oversight, that there's governance, that we know the individuals that are working as experts for the courts, that there is clear guidelines set as to who can provide those type of reports. So that is an action clearly within this, but also linking very clearly with the domestic violence strategy, because, as I said at the outset, there is clearly abuse that continues into the courts, and we need to make sure that, be it where we have a criminal trial happening, that that information is known in the civil courts, but also where there's a potential for further abuse to happen in different ways, that that's dealt with. So the strategy is over the next 3 years. Obviously, there is still some work to do. So while we've set out our 9 key principles, there will be, I suppose, the development of further teams to work on individual actions, and that is one of those actions. So it's in the earlier part of the strategy, and I suppose it's to get it up and running as quickly as possible.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kitty. Well, just to say that we did look at this in detail. And myself and Minister McEntee and Minister O'Gorman, we discussed it. Can I just say there's a lot involved in setting up an agency. There's a considerable expense to it. It has to be staffed. It's not something you can sort of just do willy-nilly. And there wasn't a strong consensus amongst the child maintenance group itself on whether or not an agency should be established. 4 members were in favour of an agency and 3 were against it. So we have to ask ourselves the question before going to all the effort and the expense to the taxpayer of setting up a new agency, would it actually deliver better outcomes for families? And that's what we have, you know, at the core of all this is delivering better outcomes for the families involved. And I know there have been calls that we should set up a similar agency to what's in place in the UK. And if you look at a recent independent report from the National Audit Office in the UK, it actually found that the number of families without a maintenance arrangement had actually increased. It had almost doubled, in fact, since the agency there was established. That report also found that unpaid maintenance in the UK is building up at more than £1 million a week, and if that trend continues, there will be over 1 billion in unpaid arrears by 2031. And on top of that, if you look into it, there's actually a lot of complaints from single parents about how the service in the UK is working. So the approach we are taking here, instead of setting up an agency, is that there's going to be a fundamental reform of the family court system. As part of that, Minister McEntee will look at how we can strengthen the enforcement orders on child maintenance, and I think that's at the core of the whole issue. The bottom line is, as a parent, you have responsibility towards your child, and we want to make sure that when a maintenance order is in place, that the mother gets the money every week, or the single parent gets the money every week, and that's the ultimate goal here. And you know, I think it's important. There's a lot of changes being announced here today. We need to let them bed in, and of course we keep everything under review. But I think this is going to make a difference.
Gabby and then Sharon.
Minister McEntee, you finished work on Friday week. Are you aware as to whether or not decisions will be made as to what is going to happen when you finish work? And Minister Humphreys, the last maternity leave, you absorbed a part of her portfolio. Do you expect to be doing the same for Friday week?
So yes, I will finish Friday week, hopefully. It's the intention. At the moment, look, there are a lot of decisions that still haven't been made. That's not just my own portfolio or Minister Humphreys. There are a lot of decisions to be made, and my understanding is there are discussions still to be had. So I don't have absolute clarity just yet.
So you're not aware of a decision that has been made in regards to your own situation?
No.
Minister Humphreys, do you expect to step up to the plate, I suppose, in family justice again?
Well, I just want to say that Helen is a great colleague, and she's doing a wonderful job as Minister for Justice. And of course, any decisions about who does what will be taken by the Taoiseach in consultation with the other two party leaders. But can I just say, Helen is actually an inspiration to young women. She really is. You know, I saw it many times in the past. Women wouldn't go forward for jobs because you know, they were afraid that if they got pregnant that they'd lose out. This isn't happening here, and Helen has, you know, holding one of the highest offices in the land, and you know, she really has broke that glass ceiling. And we talk about the glass ceiling. So she's an inspiration to others, you know, if I'm asked to support in any way, I will do that, and I'll just leave it at that.
I think I should have started by thanking Heather for her for her amazing help last year.
Question just for Minister McEntee. A court case related to surrogacy yesterday, the High Court judge said that it was unacceptable for the court to learn of plans for legislation through media reports. Is it appropriate for the court to learn in that way, and is it fair on the family that's involved in that case? And then a question to all three ministers as well, just regarding the story in today's Mirror about all non-work related electrical appliances needing to be removed from public sector offices, including kettles, fridges, coffee machines. Do you support that move?
Firstly, just on the surrogacy case, firstly, what happened over the weekend shouldn't have happened. Obviously, myself, Minister Donnelly, Minister O'Gorman are working very closely and have been for almost 2 years now to progress and bring forward amendments to the AHR bill. I hope that we have been very clear, and I have been very clear in my determination to make sure that international surrogacy is dealt with in the AHR bill, notwithstanding that it would have been preferable that information was not in the media over the weekend before anything was brought to Cabinet. For me, what's most important here, and I think for the Egan's as well, and just to acknowledge what they are going through, and it's a very, very difficult situation for them, is that we have legislation that will support them as a family, that will give them the rights that they need and that they deserve, but also many other families as well who find themselves in a similar situation. And I really hope that we will be in a position, myself, Minister Donnelly and Minister O'Gorman, to bring a joint memo to Cabinet very soon to be able to address a lot of the issues that have been dealt with, obviously, in the court case.
Is that now going to go for the end of the year?
Yes.
Louise?
Oh,
Sorry.
in relation to the question as well on non-work.
I haven't actually seen that, so I'm afraid I can't comment.
No, I haven't seen that either, but I can tell you one thing, I wouldn't get out through the day without a good mug of coffee, so.
already saw my question. But just to come back to Gavia's question about your role, Minister McEntee, are you disappointed that, I mean, this is your second child now. I think was it about a year and a half ago you had your first child. Like, do you not think that something should have been put in place between then and now to have some mechanism in place to allow you to go on maternity leave, and not just you, other members of the Oireachtas? I know there's work going on at a council level, but should there be more focus on the Oireachtas level as well?
So I do think there is, and I know there is work happening not just at a local level, where Peter Burke, working with Darragh O'Brien, has brought forward legislation to make changes to allow our councillors to take maternity leave, but also Minister O'Gorman is working. However, irrespective of what Minister O'Gorman is working on, it doesn't change the fact that under our constitution we can only have up to 15 cabinet ministers. At the moment there is 15, and it just means that for that to change, it would, my understanding, require a referendum. So I'm not sure. You know, I think there will be in the near future, I'm sure, a number of referendum. Whether this is something that would be part of it, I don't know. But in order for that to change, that is what is required, and we just haven't had anything at the moment. I think it's important that, I suppose, as Heather has said, irrespective of what position you're in, that you have an entitlement to maternity leave. There's not too many roles, if any, that would require a referendum to make this kind of change. But obviously, if that was the decision taken by government, then it would be up to people to decide what their view is on that.
As a woman who has been through this, would you be pushing for that when you come back from that leave and when you're back at the cabinet table, presumably? Would you be pushing to get that referendum through?
Well, I would like to ensure that women who come after me, and there will be many more after me, that they have the entitlement to take maternity leave that doesn't require a special arrangement. So yes, I would like to see it happen, but I appreciate it's not something that's it's not straightforward. Legislation is not straightforward, but this is again something even more complex that needs to be dealt with.
Just for clarity, it's a referendum on the number of cabinet ministers, 15 to increase to 15, is that right?
Again, I suppose you'd have to work through what exactly you were seeking to change, but my understanding, the challenge is at the moment is that you can only have 15. Obviously, when the first cabinet was established, they perhaps didn't visualise that there would be more than 15, or that there might be a woman around the table.
Okay, thank you.
Given that many of the reforms that you announced the last few days will take a while to get to completion, would you be determined or keen that you retain your role in this particular portfolio? Would that be your preference?
I would love to be able to see them through, yes.
Thanks, folks.